Yeah. You got to love the technical difficulty sometimes. But yeah, I think, all right, let's try it now.
Okay.
All right, can you hear me now?
I can
All
hear you
right.
now.
Beautiful. There we go.
I
All
don't know
right.
what happened there. You were chatting with Raul, and as soon as
Yeah.
you got off with him, I lost you.
Yeah. Technical difficulties at its best.
Okay.
So, all right, here we go. We're right around the corner for NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, I think it's interesting because to me, and even with your experience going into the playoffs and being in the Stanley Cup, we know it's a grit and it's a grind for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And I was about to start the show with this is I feel a disconnect with the NBA playoffs because years ago I didn't feel that because there were a lot of star players and I felt like the nostalgia of it because we know it's a stylistic sport, and there's a mix between individual and then also team sport chemistry. But
Yeah.
I feel the opposite with the NHL. I feel more connected with the Stanley Cup playoffs because you got star power, you've got, a great team chemistry all around, and these games are exciting, even if it gets longer to the overtime. So, from your experience, what exactly do we expect when it comes to the Stanley Cup playoffs? Because many people that are new to hockey have no idea what they're missing out on in this.
Well, I think number one, the game's in as good a shape as it's ever been. There's so much young star power in the NHL right now on so many different teams. And obviously, we're in Canada here, so we live and breathe it. But I think for a lot of American viewers, you'll see that the game's getting fast, it's getting exciting, and the league's getting a lot of parity where a lot of teams are close. And even though you've got, Colorado Avalanche are strong, Minnesota Wild are strong, but honestly, from 1 to 16, anybody can beat anybody really on any given night. So it's not really about who had the better regular season. It's sort of about which team's gelling at this time and playing their best hockey.
It's kind of interesting because the storylines that we have this year, Buffalo, first time in 15 years they're in the playoffs, and everybody's got to be loving it because outside of the Bills always being in the playoffs for the NFL, now you've got hockey going into the playoffs now, and a first timer with the Utah Mammoth, who originally was a team you played for with the Coyotes, and so I feel bad for Arizona fans because the fact of the way it went down, but you got to be amped up and excited when you get playoffs in Utah. That just means now you're officially on the map. So lots of storylines, but I feel like it could be anybody's game up from here because the Avalanche may look strong, but do they really look stronger as we get further and further in the playoffs? It's honestly a hard guess from here the closer we get to the Stanley Cup Final.
It is, and it's so exciting to have teams like Buffalo. Like Buffalo nobody ever thought they'd ever make the playoffs, and they fired a general manager early in the season, and they have just been on a tear. Utah was a up and coming team in Arizona, but they were just young, and they're maturing, and obviously their fan base is ecstatic. And I'm sure they're driving the team too. They're feeding off that energy, so. It is exciting to have the new teams, and then you got the same old teams. Colorado's always been strong. Dallas has always been strong. Vegas, Edmonton, Carolina, lots of teams there. But I mean, it's really anybody's game. I think at this point, Pittsburgh, I think, overshot a lot of expectations this year. Ottawa squeaked in. Uh, even the teams that were, 10, 15 points ahead of the bottom teams, you can't write out, the bottom eight, in each conference. It's going to be interesting for sure.
It's interesting too because the fact of Anji Kopitar spending as many years as he has with the Kings, he ain't quite done yet with the Kings sneaking into the playoffs, But there's one person in particular that I think he had a hell of a 2025, 26 year, and that's Alex Ovechkin. I don't know, to me, it all started when, Russia being banned for this year's Olympic competitive tournament. And I even said to everybody, if Russia was in this thing, Russia, United States, Canada, and I would make the argument Finland would have been the top 4 teams in the Olympics that would be competing for a gold medal. And because that didn't happen, it kind of left Alex Ovechkin in a pickle of, I'm close to the end of my career. I would have loved to have had a cherry on top type of deal to be playing for my country one last time in this and then ride off into the sunset. And then all of a sudden, you had the last game against the Pittsburgh Penguins against your rival, Sidney Crosby, and you don't shake hands, and then all of a sudden you come up to the news, Washington lost it to the playoff contention. So it's like, what really runs through your mind? If you're in the mind of Alex Ovechkin, what really has to run through your mind?
Well, it's an interesting question. First of all, hockey wise, I mean, I don't want to get into geopolitics, but hockey wise, Russia should always be in these events. I mean,
absolutely,
they're one of the greatest hockey countries in the world. And I know Canada and Russia have always had an amazing rivalry. Hell, I got into a brawl with the Russians in the World Juniors in 1987. So we've always had a good rivalry, and it's fun. I think that rested maybe some of the guys. Panarin, Ovechkin rested them this year. But I gotta say too, like Alex Ovechkin at 41 years old, scoring 30 goals, it's incredible. Like this, the guy, he doesn't move like he used to move, but he's still got the most elite shot. And it's if he packs it in, which it appears as though he's going to, it's sad, because I think there was people out there, myself included, that would love to have seen him get 1,000 NHL goals, which is incredible. But still, the most elite goal scorer of all time, and the game will be a little bit less without him. But he sure provided years and years of entertainment with his shot and his scoring ability.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have had a ride into the sunset moment with Alex Ovechkin of everything he's accomplished, finally getting the Stanley Cup in 2018. Like, it would have been just the perfect form for him, breaking Wayne's record on that, and then just, being able to play and represent for your country one last time in this setting. Which leads me to this, because looking at the Edmonton Oilers right now, and seeing the state in which Connor McDavid finds himself. You've been a part of a fantastic group in Edmonton that went through a lot of adversity. I mean, I think of it this way. I compare the situation that Wayne Gretzky and many of you have went through to the Jordan Bulls years, because Jordan, youngster, great scorer, and was just so iconic that he lived and breathed Chicago basketball, but had a roadblock because he's dealing with Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Bad Boys of the Pistons. Whereas for Edmonton, you had to deal with the 4 straight years of New York, the Islanders being as tough as they are, and to where Gretzky and Messier and many of them are like, look, we got to continue to build this group because we will get there. It's initially where everything has to click, and then by the time they get back in and they have the momentum driving their way to winning and hoisting the Stanley Cup, it becomes the best breath of fresh air for everybody. So when I look at Connor McDavid with this, because he's the best hockey player right now in the nation and amongst the league, and with everything that had gone through where they were in the Stanley Cup twice against Florida and could not pan out through them, I mean, there's got to be some sort of timetable ticking here, Chris, because like the Edmonton can't stand for another one of these years to where they kept trying, but yet it still doesn't seem to pan out. Like, something has to give at the end of the day.
Well, for sure. And you said it, like the Bulls had the Pistons. Even when the Oilers were winning cups back in the day, the Calgary Flames gave them a run every year. And, like the most recent version of the Edmonton Oilers ran up against, the Florida Panthers, which were built for the playoffs. And, they look like they obviously got tired. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row. It's not an easy chore. But I think what you got to look at is you got to just get to the dance. That's a big thing. Like, you got to get to the top 16. After that, in the hockey world anyways, you don't necessarily have to, the regular season really is meaningless. All you got to be is you got to be playing your best hockey at the right time. Are the Edmonton Oilers playing the best hockey right now? I don't know. They've definitely cleaned up their defensive woes. But there's still a goaltender question mark. There's still a defense question mark, and they're up against a bunch of giants. So nobody really knows, but I'm telling you, like, just get to the dance. I also think too that, Connor McDavid, he's going to get it at some point, but the clock is definitely ticking. I don't see Connor McDavid finishing his career without a Stanley Cup. For myself, I sure hope it's here in Edmonton. But the great players, that's all he really wants. He took a big pay cut again this year to leave money on the table so the team could sign other players. And, did they improve? Debatable. Are they there and they got a chance at it? Yeah, as good as anybody else at this point.
Do you recall a memory of yours when you won the Stanley Cup, like what that moment felt like for you, and any kind of fun moment? Because listen, I lived in Vegas my entire life, all 29 years, and when I tell you, when the Vegas Golden Knights planted, like I wasn't sure what to expect. I would have expected them not to be as good because it was a start, but then when they had the most memorable first year start to get into the Stanley Cup Final, and then getting a chance to meet Stanley in person. I didn't touch him. I made sure that I was like, we're going to have a great conversation here because I need to know your history. And then find when the time they would hoist the cup. And then the minute that I got my hometown finally hoisting a cup for the first time, it was just first time ever watching my favorite team, and being my hometown team meant a lot to me because it was just the energy, the vibe, and yet the grind and the hard work finally paying off. Was there a moment for you when you finally won that Stanley Cup, a great memory that always stayed with you for so long?
Well, Jake, I got to correct you first. I was with the team for two cups in 88 and 90, but I was one of the Black Aces. I was practicing every day. I was there. I wasn't on the active roster, so I was one of those young kids that was cutting my teeth. And honestly, our team won the Stanley Cup when I was 18 years old. And I was at that time going, okay, I'll get my time. And, I 15 years later when I'm retiring, I'm like, damn it, I didn't get there, but so close, and as there's other times too, I got to game 7 of the conference finals. And, unfortunately for myself, the one thing you do remember is the pain of defeat. Very few get to feel the glory of the victory. But so I was with, Gretzky and company and Messier and those guys for the 88 Cup, the 90 Cup. Gretzky was gone, but Messier was still back. So I was skating with the guys every day, and I was practicing, waiting for an injury. Didn't get in, but I tell you, the sacrifice that they all made, it's incredible. And there's times when the guys that have won the Stanley Cup, you think they're just going to be celebrating like crazy, and they're literally just licking wounds and trying to recover. And they get the energy back at 24 hours later, and they're ready to party. But they are beat up at the end of this thing. And at the end of the day, I think every player would tell you it's worth it 100%.
Absolutely, especially when like you're a star goaltender and you're taking pucks to the face left and right, and then your whole body's just bruised up, and then your body's under so much duress because of not even prepared for checks or any of that up and on the boards. And so it's like you're constantly fighting through all of that. And then it's just a lot sweeter when you drink out the cup. And so, to see that, and even for a lot of the guys that have been waiting for this moment for so long, that that's worth the wait. And that's worth having the opportunity. I mean, we watched Ray Bourque finally end up winning the Stanley Cup, and how memorable it was for him. Lanny McDonald with Calgary. So anything could really happen at this point. But if it's so memorable to someone who's been around in the league for so long, like that's just a 1 in a million type of feeling for them. So
I know players would sell their soul to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, that's how we are in Canada anyways. We grow up dreaming of it. And, when you get to that point, you make it to the NHL. That's all you really want. And I truly believe that's what all the players want. They'll put money aside, they'll put everything aside, and all they really want is their name on the Stanley Cup. to feel like a true champion. And a lot of these players have won at different levels. You know, they've won in the American Hockey League, they've won in junior, won Memorial Cup. But at the end of the day, the one that everybody's most proud of, obviously, is the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the feeling worthwhile at the end of the day. Well, Chris, appreciate you for joining us here up and onto the program. Let's see, because there's lots of surprises, lots of shockers, but there's also so much fun action that comes through with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's see what we have in store for the Edmonton Oilers and see where we stand at the end of the day and who is worthy to hoist Sir Stanley at the end of the tournament.
It's going to be a fun ride. We had the Oilers and the Avalanche last night. It was a 2-1 shootout victory for the Avs. So I don't think it's going to be any difference if these teams meet in the conference finals, and that's pretty much going to go for every other team in the playoffs.
There you go, man. Well, appreciate you for coming on by, man. Enjoy the rest of it, and we'll see what we got up here and in the playoffs in the next couple of days.
Thanks, Jake.
Absolutely. All right, moving forward, as of course, the